Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Now, the United States of America and China are close to reaching an agreement on the short video app TikTok. US team led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese side led by Chinese Premier He Lifeng met in Madrid, Spain. Both sides held talks to resolve trade tensions between the two countries. Earlier, US President Donald Trump, in a post on Truth Social, hinted at reaching a deal on TikTok without naming the social media platform. On the other hand, Trump also has pressurized NATO countries to impose 100% tariffs on China and on other nations, asserting that relations between both the countries remain a very strong one. He also said he will be speaking to President Xi Jinping on Friday. Speaking to reporters after the meeting, Bessent said that they had very good discussions and trade negotiations will be held in about a month's time in a different location. The latest round of negotiations, the fourth in 4 months, took place in Spain. The first day meeting concluded on Sunday after about 6 hours with no indication of a breakthrough.
We have a framework for a TikTok deal. The two leaders, President Trump and Party Chair Xi, will speak on Friday to complete the deal, but we do have a framework for a deal with TikTok. Getting to this framework was made possible by President Trump and the high regard that President Trump has for Party Chair Xi. So when the leaders have mutual respect, then the delegations have mutual respect. And as Ambassador Greer said, we were in substantial contact with President Trump last night and then again today.
First the EU, then the G7, and then NATO. President Donald Trump is demanding they stop buying Russian oil and even slap 100% tariffs on China. But will his high-stakes gamble isolate Putin or spark a global tariff war? Find out in this report.
President Donald Trump is turning up the heat on America's allies, NATO, the EU and the G7. With a bold ultimatum, stop buying Russian oil or the US won't move on tougher sanctions against Moscow. In a fiery letter, Trump blasted Europe's energy dependence, calling NATO's commitment to winning the war in Ukraine far less than 100% and shocking. He declared he's ready to impose major sanctions on Russia, but only if all NATO nations join in and stop buying oil from Russia. And Trump is not stopping there. He wants NATO and the G7 to slap tariffs of 50 to 100% on Chinese goods, arguing that Beijing holds a strong control, even grip over Russia, and that punishing tariffs are the only way to break it. India is also in Trump's crosshairs. Last month, he doubled tariffs on Indian imports to 50%, punishing New Delhi for continuing to purchase Russian energy. But China is rejecting Trump's call outright. Foreign Minister Wang Yi hit back saying, and I quote, "Wars cannot solve problems and sanctions only make matters worse. China does not participate in or plan wars. What China does is to encourage peace talks and promote political settlement through dialogue," unquote. Trump's allies in Congress are pushing him to act. Europe is stalling over fears of a trade war, and China is digging in on diplomacy. So the question is, will NATO, the EU and the G7 risk an economic showdown with India and China to corner Putin? Or will Trump's call fall flat? With Shorik Shah, Bureau Report, India Today.
The Arab OIC meeting is taking place in Doha. This after Israel attacked Qatar. An attack on Qatar that has jolted the Arab world, but hasn't been shook enough or shaken enough to show unity. Leaders of the Muslim and the Arab world are meeting, but here is my take on a divided Muslim world that keeps Israel going. You can watch the full episode on India Today Global's YouTube channel. Do also subscribe to the channel. But for now, here is an excerpt. Last week, Israeli missiles struck the heart of Doha, killing 5 Hamas members and a Qatari security official. The attack came just as Hamas leaders gathered to discuss a US-brokered ceasefire proposal for Gaza. For the first time in decades, Israel had directly attacked a Gulf state, one of America's own allies. Today in Doha, leaders from 57 Islamic nations and 22 Arab states gathered for an emergency summit. They issued a strongly worded statement and promised action against Israel. But if history is any guide, their words will echo hollow across the region whilst Palestinian suffering continues. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. For decades, the Muslim world has perfected the art of condemnation without consequence. Organization of Islamic Cooperation, that's the OIC, has issued countless resolutions about Palestine. The Arab League has held urgent meetings after urgent meetings. Yet, illegal Israeli settlements continue to expand, and Palestinian children still die under bombardment. When Israel killed over 15,000 children in Gaza, Arab leaders called for peace. When Israeli forces stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of Islam's holiest sites, they issued statements. When Gaza faced starvation, they sent humanitarian aid whilst maintaining business as usual with Israel's backers. The Muslim world's greatest weakness isn't military inferiority, it's internal division. Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shia Iran remain locked in proxy wars across the region, using Palestine as a symbolic trophy rather than a genuine cause for unity. Whilst these regional giants compete for influence, Israel grows stronger. Muslim-majority nations collectively spend hundreds of billions on defense annually, more than many Western powers combined. Turkey has NATO's second-largest army. Pakistan possesses nuclear weapons. Saudi Arabia boasts cutting-edge military technology. Yet this formidable force remains fragmented, fighting internal conflicts whilst Israel maintains military superiority through US support. Even during Gaza's darkest moments, no coordinated military response emerged to protect Palestinian civilians. Gulf states control nearly a third of global oil reserves. The Strait of Hormuz and Suez Canal, controlled by Muslim nations, are vital checkpoints for world trade. 2 billion Muslims represent massive consumer markets across continents, yet this economic power remains largely untapped for Palestinian justice. Israeli spokespersons dominate airwaves whilst Palestinian voices struggle for basic recognition. This isn't accidental. It reflects decades of underinvestment in cultural diplomacy and strategic communication. The UAE's enthusiastic embrace of normalization with Israel exemplifies the problem. Despite ongoing settlement expansion and Palestinian dispossession, Emirati leaders celebrate their partnership with Tel Aviv as a strategic masterstroke against Iranian influence. Morocco followed suit, trading Palestinian solidarity for US recognition of its Western Sahara claims. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman speaks of eventual normalization once Palestinian statehood is achieved, a condition Israel has no intention of fulfilling. These nations justify abandonment of Palestine through geopolitical calculations. They've discovered that aligning with Israel brings Western approval and protection from criticism of domestic human rights records. Across the Muslim world, ordinary citizens burn with solidarity for Palestine. From Jakarta to Istanbul, millions march for Gaza. Online activism flourishes despite government surveillance. Yet, their voices remain powerless against authoritarian regimes that suppress dissent in the name of stability. Egyptian protesters face arrest. Saudi imams preach that Palestine belongs to Jews as well as Muslims. Emirati youth openly admire Tel Aviv's nightlife whilst Gaza burns. The gap between popular sentiment and official policy has never been wider. Israel's attack on Qatar has created a rare moment of clarity. The Muslim world can no longer pretend that measured responses and diplomatic protests will protect Palestinian lives or preserve regional security. Either the Islamic summit marks a turning point towards meaningful action, or it becomes another monument to the gap between rhetoric and reality that has characterized Muslim responses to Palestinian sufferings for generations. 2 million Gazans await the answer. 2 billion Muslims hold the power to provide it. History watches to see which force will prove stronger, the comfort of inaction or the courage of justice. The summit's true test won't be the words spoken in Doha's conference halls, but the actions taken in the weeks that follow. Palestine has waited 76 years for liberation. The question is whether its supposed defenders will finally match their deeds to their declarations. Thank you for watching Statecraft. Now, days after Israeli strike on Doha jolted the Middle East and put US's stakes in the Arab world at risk, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited Jerusalem. Rubio is also expected to visit Qatar on Tuesday as Doha held emergency summit of the Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation to propose concrete steps against Israel.
Israeli airstrike on Qatar has shook the Middle East, forcing US to quickly dispatch top Trump aide Marco Rubio to Jerusalem. Israel had claimed the attack was a precision strike on Hamas leaders in Doha. But as Rubio is on a two-day visit to Israel, Qatar holds emergency summit of the Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, a day after foreign ministers from the participating states met behind closed doors in Doha to propose concrete steps against Israel.
كانت إسرائيل تريد اغتيال القيادة السياسية لحركة حماس فلماذا تفاوض؟
If Israel wants to assassinate Hamas's political leadership, why is it negotiating with them? And if it wants to negotiate for the release of hostages, why is it assassinating everyone with whom it could negotiate? And how are we supposed to receive in our country Israeli delegations for negotiations, while those who send these delegations are planning to bomb this country? These questions don't expect answers, but rather explain why we say openly that this aggression is truly vile, treacherous, and cowardly, and it's impossible to deal with this level of malice and betrayal.
Rubio, who is on a two-day visit to Israel, met Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier, expressed being unhappy with Israel's strike on Qatar. The Gulf country also hosts a major US airbase and has been a key player in brokering diplomatic efforts to end the war in Gaza.
Obviously, we were not happy about it. The president was not happy about it. Now we need to move forward and figure out what comes next.
Benjamin Netanyahu termed the US-Israel bond as durable as the stones of the Western Wall. This follows Rubio's visit to the Western Wall, a sacred site in Judaism, upon his arrival. Rubio also held a 3-hour-long meeting with Netanyahu, after which both of them held a joint press conference. According to Washington Post, Rubio is scheduled to visit Qatar on Tuesday.
Israel's decision to act against the Hamas terrorist leadership in Qatar was a wholly independent decision by Israel. It was a decision taken by me and our top security force chiefs. It was conducted by us, and we assumed full responsibility for it because we believe that terrorists should not be given a haven.
We are focused on what happens now, what happens next, what role can Qatar play possibly in reaching an outcome here that leads not just to the end of this hostilities, not just to the release of all of the hostages, both living and deceased, not just the disarmament and elimination of Hamas, but also a better future for the people of Gaza, which isn't possible as long as Hamas exists, which isn't possible as long as 48 hostages are being held. And so we're going to continue to encourage Qatar to play a constructive role in that regard.
Fury erupted across the region after Israeli strike killed 5 Hamas leaders and a Qatari security officer, missing a Hamas negotiating team that was in Doha to work on US proposal to end war in Gaza. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
And And here are some other stories from across the globe in World at a Glance.
US military officers observed joint war games between Russia and Belarus at the Zapad 2025. The exercise takes place at a time when Poland shot down Russian drones that crossed into its airspace, and a Russian drone was detected in Romanian airspace. US President Donald Trump is set to make an unprecedented second state visit to the United Kingdom on Tuesday. He will be accompanied by his wife Melania Trump and a group of tech and finance CEOs. The delegation includes Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, Apple CEO Tim Cook, BlackRock Chairman and CEO Larry Fink, and Blackstone CEO Stephen Schwarzman. Elon Musk has bought $1 billion worth of Tesla shares on Friday, according to a regulatory filing that he made today. The purchase represents a rare action by Musk or any other CEO. Few business leaders using their own money to buy their company's stock without exercising of options. A Chinese movie that revisits the horrific World War III era human experiments conducted by Japan's Nutrus Germ Warfare Unit 731 is expected to become the next blockbuster in the country. To be premiered on September 18th, the movie Evil Unbound recounts the bacteriological warfare waged by Japan's infamous Unit 731 and the inhumane human experiments on Chinese civilians during the Japanese aggression in China. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War.